Thank you very much. And could I start by thanking Bloomberg for giving us space today and an opportunity today to put our case across and have this discussion about the economy of this country and economic policy in general, and congratulate Bloomberg on its growth. And I remember the first time I came here, I was deeply impressed by the grazing rights in the refreshment area outside, and I remain deeply impressed by the grazing rights you have and the way that staff clearly value it and enjoy it, as do visitors to the building. So thank you very much indeed for that. Could I also say a big thank you to John McDonnell and Rebecca Long-Bailey. John was appointed Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer immediately after I was elected leader of the party last year, and I'm really proud of the work that John has done in changing the parameters of economic thinking within our society, of ensuring that we do have an economic discussion that includes everybody, that works for all, that we measure our economic success by the reduction in poverty, by the number of children that get better chances in life, and the way in which equality is enhanced across our society, not minimised or reduced. So, John, thank you very much for all of that and the enthusiasm and energy you've put into doing this job. I look forward to the day when you're in number 11. And could I also say a very big thank you to Rebecca Long-Bailey, because, as you know, she was appointed to the position of Shadow Secretary in June because there were some changes made after some resignations from the Shadow Cabinet. I want to thank her for taking it on, and she has done it magnificently. Stood up straight away at the dispatch box to deal with the most intricate details of the finance bill, mastered that brief in a very impressive way, and really, again, put it out there about the sense of social justice we need on tax credits, on support for business, on issues of rate relief, and above all about issues of economic development, and bringing that message of hope and a genuine demand for equality within our society. So, Becky, thank you very much for everything that you do for us. This is I think I'm right in saying, but there's plenty of people around here who know better than me, I think it's the 55th leadership campaign event that I've done since the start of this campaign, which was probably not very long ago, but seems a very long time ago. And the events are usually, well, always very well attended. All of the policy documents that we put forward are there for discussion. They are there for debate. They're there for amendment, and it's amazing the number of people that do respond to all of the policy statements we put out, be they on culture, be they on housing, be they on women's rights, be they on education. And last week we sent out a message via social media saying, would you like to comment on any of our documents? And within a day, we already had 12,000, often very, very considered replies to them. And by today, I'm sure it's a very much larger number than that. And that shows that there is a thirst for doing politics in a very different way in this society. People do feel excluded from the political debate. They do feel forgotten and left behind. And what our campaign is designed to do is open up that space, and open up that space to feed into practical policies on which hopefully we can have a Labour government that will deliver those policies for the future. So I want to talk today about the wake of the referendum to leave the European Union and the summer of political turmoil, because our economy stands poised between two alternative futures. There is a huge potential in our society. There are talented people across the whole country. The millions who want a decent job or to set up a business or use their skills for the wider social good. In every single part of our country, that potential exists to do so much better than we're doing at the present time. But we have an economy and, frankly, a set of institutions that has let people down badly. You can already see one future that's being laid out in front of us. You can see it in microcosm in Shirebrook in Derbyshire. This is a once proud mining community that was devastated by pit closures. Good, secure jobs were lost when the colliery finally closed in 1993. For over a decade, the town was left to stagnate. Absolutely no investment, nothing happening. And then directly on the site of the old colliery, Sports Direct opened its huge warehouse in the early part of this century. There were jobs on offer, it's true, but they were the worst of the worst. 0 hours contracts and wages even below the abysmal legal minimum. Health and safety on the site was cut to the bone. In just 2 years, ambulances were called to the site 76 times. One woman was forced to give birth in the toilets. She was so terrified of losing her job if she took time off to give birth or leave the building during her confinement. These were conditions that would frankly shame a Victorian mill owner right here in 21st century Britain. A long-running campaign led by the trade union Unite, with the support of some media, exposed the abuse. Publicly shamed, Chief Executive Mike Ashley has now promised to change conditions. And we wait to see the result of that. But sadly, many of those in the first Sport Direct warehouse are agency workers not directly employed by Sport Direct. But there are other Sports Directs out there. This isn't just about a single bad boss. The failure of Sport Direct is a failure of the entire economic model. We've built an economy where the fast buck takes precedence over the long-term, patient investment that will deliver good quality jobs. Instead of changing direction, this is the future we're drifting into under this Conservative government. The number of workers on 0 hours contracts has leapt by 20% in the last year alone, nearly 1 million in total. Real hourly pay has fallen 10% since the crash, the worst performance of any developed country except Greece. Meanwhile, the worst austerity spending cuts for generations have eaten away at our public services, and yet still lead to rising levels of government debt. This is the future the Conservatives hold out for us, a mean-spirited vision that will squander talents and skills and deprive people of the opportunities that should be theirs to enjoy. But this vision is also the path of least resistance, and that is why this directionless government is happy to settle for it. They wandered unprepared into Brexit, and now they are scurrying away from the mess they've caused. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has all but shut up shop. Philip Hammond is refusing to clarify the government's own fiscal position when assurances are needed in the wake of the Leave vote. Even as it's becoming clear that monetary policy is reaching the limits of its capacity, the Chancellor is still seemingly content to stick to George Osborne's plans for spending cuts. With capital costs for government the lowest in our century, it simply beggars belief that any responsible government would actually be seeking to cut public investment. But that is what appears to be happening. For Philip Hammond to carry on cutting investment is an act of unpardonable folly. Labour is calling for him to immediately reverse planned cuts in public investment and bring forward projects that will create jobs and support the economy. The new Brexit Secretary, meanwhile, has been unable to answer simple questions on the government's own negotiating position, even as the Prime Minister has been busily disavowing the promises made during the referendum campaign. Theresa May herself has been long on rhetoric but short on direction. Brexit means Brexit, but apparently, what does Brexit actually mean? The distance between the enormity of the challenges and the paucity of the vision on offer is striking. Instead of a vision for the future, the boldest policy offer from this government has been to resurrect the proven failure of grammar schools. There could be no clearer indication of the government's failure to rise to the level the situation now demands. They're retreating into some kind of 1950s fantasy world that is totally out of touch with modern Britain. Under Theresa May and the Conservatives, Britain is being left on hold. And that has immediate consequences. It means the uncertainty around Brexit is prolonged, business investment plans are paused or even cancelled. Companies reconsider their commitments here, jobs are being placed at risk. Yet this Conservative government is performing the equivalent of pulling the duvet over their heads and hoping it will go away. The complacency over the Brexit negotiations is extraordinary and a matter of growing concern, wherever you stood in the referendum campaign. We accept and respect the decision of the British people in the referendum to leave the European Union. We've set out our red lines for trade, investment, jobs, and environmental and social protection in the negotiations for a new relationship with Europe. We will be pressing for full access for the European single market for goods and services as part of the negotiations. We should not be falling back on a World Trade Organization, only trade dealt with by Europe, that would potentially risk damage to the public finances and significant job losses. But there are directives and obligations linked to the single market, such as state aid rules and requirements to liberalise and privatise public services, which we would not want to see as part of a post-Brexit relationship. What is essential is that the government brings forward its own agenda for those negotiations to Parliament as soon as possible. The overwhelming fact of the vote to leave the EU is that the status quo is no longer an option. In voting leave, in communities across the country, they rejected the status quo that they believed had failed them. It's not just in Shirebrook, in former industrial communities and in coastal towns. This is the failure of an entire economic model to provide the chances and opportunities for a generation of our people. It's an economic model that has discarded good jobs and stripped whole communities of their pride. Promoted for decades, this model argued that if taxes were slashed, big business and the mega rich would benefit, then everybody would benefit. But it has too often meant poverty pay, 0 hours contracts and lives ruined by a shortage of affordable homes. Instead of trickle down, we've seen a monstrous trickle up of wealth and opportunities. Too much wealth became concentrated into too few hands in too few places. And former Chancellor George Osborne's political choice to impose austerity on top of this meant not only the worst spending cuts in this country for 3 generations, but a slump in living standards for most. 80% of households have seen either no increase or falling incomes since the crash. Andy Haldane, the Bank of England chief economist, has spoken of a lost decade of earnings. The Leave vote for all those in Left Behind Britain was a decisive rejection of all of this. We in the Labour Party campaigned in the referendum for a vote to remain and reform. The large majority of the Labour movement and the Labour Party were clear that the European Union helped protect workers' rights and secure economic prosperity. But our arguments did not carry the day. We now have to set out the best possible future for our country after the Leave vote. One that defends hard-won rights for working people, but one that also stakes out a bold vision for our economy that can work for all, not just the privileged few. We have to present to the country, in particular to those communities in Left Behind Britain, an alternative. We must build consent for this model. As a country, we must have a proper informed debate that requires this government to make its own intentions clear. No backroom deals and secretive negotiations behind closed doors. Parliament and the whole country must be fully informed. I entirely agree with Len McCluskey, speaking at TUC Congress earlier this week, who said that we take the Leave vote as an opportunity to start the debate as to what sort of country we want Britain to be. I want now to lay out our vision for how our economy can work for the many and not for the few, of a new, dynamic economy that breaks with the failures and injustice of the past. There is an alternative to the Tories' drift and failure that is a better path for the economy to take. The challenges are substantial. Ours is now a low investment, low pay, high debt economy. The pattern since the crash of 2008 has been very clear. Investment has fallen and has been too easy to substitute cheap, expendable labour for investment in machinery, new technology and vital infrastructure. The result is that our economy has become being very good at generating poor quality jobs, so that over half of those in poverty are now also in work. Think of that. Half of those in poverty are also in work at the same time, and many of those are dependent on in-work benefits. Deindustrialisation has helped kill off many of the relatively secure, relatively well-paid jobs that manufacturing industries support, that Becky was talking about from her own constituency and community. For too many, the alternative now on offer, especially for the young, is low pay and insecurity. This is a desperate situation for those pushed into zero-hours jobs, particularly where they are forced into overpriced and insecure private rented accommodation. But it also means that the base of our tax system is steadily eroding. If the super rich are opting out of taxes on one side, and too many people are too insecure and too poorly paid to carry a tax burden on the other, we cannot continue to fund the high-quality public services we all need and want. The spread of automation, meanwhile, is now starting to eat into previously secure middle-class jobs, as even complex tasks are being computerised. The Bank of England has suggested that up to 15 million UK jobs could be at risk from automation over the next decade. And the IMF, like other forecasters, now expects growth to be very weak across the developed world. The IMF cites low investment, the weight of private sector debt, and the long-term productivity and demographic issues, as bearing down on the growth potential of advanced economies, especially our heavily indebted societies, who are more vulnerable to the financial shocks than they were. And all of this presents a deep challenge to the social democratic and socialist tradition that Labour, new or old, has always been part of. It punctures the old belief that it was possible simply to redistribute the proceeds, a growing economy, to pay for public services. It can no longer credibly be argued for the majority of people that free trade and free markets alone will deliver increased prosperity. A future Labour government will have to do more than redistribute income and wealth. It will have to focus on how we can earn that income and wealth in the first place. Above everything, we have to address the need to rebuild and transform how our economy works. Labour's positive vision is at the centre of this. At the centre of this transformation is the need to deliver investment. It's investment in new equipment and new machinery and new technology and new ideas that can deliver rising productivity. For a government, that means making serious long-term commitment to overhaul and rebuild our infrastructure right across the country to unlock its potential. Not just talking about a northern powerhouse, but delivering it. Not just putting on a high-vis jacket for a photo shoot, but making sure every community is part of that transformation. That's why we have pledged a £500 billion investment commitment. Our investment pledge will fit completely within the clear framework provided by our fiscal credibility rule. Labour's rule, announced by John McDonnell and drawn up with the help of world-leading economists, gives government the capacity to invest while delivering financial stability. If we want high-quality public services, we have to create a high-quality economy. We'll use record-low capital costs for government to make that happen. Delivered through public capital spend, the new National Investment Bank and regional development banks, this investment programme will be on a scale that will transform how our economy operates. We'll build new democratic institutions with clear public service mandates to ensure every part of our country gets the investment it needs. We want to take power out of the hands of a few elite circles in Westminster and around here in the City of London, and give communities across the country the ability to shape their own destinies. That is what I'm picking up all the time, the more I travel around the country as part of this campaign or indeed any other visits that we do. We'll end the culture of short-termism and the quick bucks that have dominated our economy and restore pride and dignity to left-behind Britain. It's time for our local communities and our regions to take back control. The old default, pretending the market alone will deliver, is no longer feasible. World trade has consistently grown less rapidly than the world economy, and even over the last year has begun to shrink. Mega deals like TTIP and CETA are actually hitting the buffers. The old rules of globalization, in which manufacturing would rush to wherever labour was cheapest, are being rewritten. For decades or more, the squeeze on manufacturing employment has been relentless, as millions of new workers were added to the global labour force. But after years of plant closures and steady employment decline, 1 in 6 UK manufacturers report bringing some production back to the UK. This reshoring, driven by the need for sophisticated manufacturers to locate close to their markets and draw on highly skilled labour. The economies that are navigating this switch successfully are not the ones where governments are taking a hands-off approach. Governments across the world are breaking with the old model and choosing to intervene in their economies. I'll give you an example. When the steel crisis broke, as cheap steel, mainly from China, flooded the world markets and undermined their domestic industries, major governments chose to intervene. The US pushed up tariffs on imported steel to 266% in some cases of some steels. Italy moved to nationalise a steel producer. Germany increased its subsidies. The EU as a whole attempted to introduce sharp tariff increases. They were, however, held back by our own, the British government, which clung to the old free market dogma. Free market ideology counted more than a prosperous economy. Eventually, under pressure from the unions and the opposition, the government was forced to say yes, the UK government could also take a stake in British steel producers. The lesson is simple. Successful economies need governments prepared to back them up. Good business needs good government, not no government. This isn't just about protecting essential industries. Successful economies today are those that have a government prepared to stand up and support new businesses and create new opportunities. Germany's Industry 4 programme is intended to maximise its capacity in order to profit from the fourth industrial revolution, the digital transformation of manufacturing and engineering. Deloitte's Manufacturing Competitiveness Index shows the US racing ahead, overtaking China on the back of its commitment since 2009 to deliver in research, new technology and innovation. Without similar commitments, our own economy will start to slip even further behind. But our economy lets us down badly in the provision of skills and the provision of digital infrastructure. Our broadband access is amongst the lowest and most expensive of any of the OECD countries. And our schools, overwhelmed by testing, our further education system being whittled to the bone, adult learning slashed, and our universities charging higher and higher fees, and as a result, our students getting deeper and deeper into debt. So as part of our infrastructure investment commitment, we want to see superfast broadband delivered to every part of the country. We know this can make a difference. I'll give you an example. The turnover of Cornwall's digital sector grew 153% in the last year, well ahead of London. The local press have started saying Cornwall can be Britain's Silicon Valley. This is on the back of a £136 million European Union funded scheme to introduce high-speed broadband. That's how we can start to turn around those parts of our country that have suffered from investment too long. Indeed, some remote parts of Scotland have begun to see quite impressive economic growth on the back of better digital communications. But we also need to address the skills shortage that so many employers now cite as a major barrier. That's why a Labour government will look at creating a national education service, providing the best possible education for all. Instead of Tory tests and segregation at the age of 11, we'll make sure that every single person has the opportunity of education, so that every single person in our society can meet their full potential. It's education that will help deliver the high technology, high investment economy of the future right across this country. We will remove the false distinction between training and university and reinstate adult education. Education should be valued in this country as the same way as we value our National Health Service. We invest too little in scientific research. As other countries are looking to increase their investments in science and technology, Britain has no clear plan to do the same. I want to see this country move towards the OECD target of 3% of GDP spent on scientific research from all sources. We can start by doubling energy research in line with the recommendations of Nicholas Stern and others, overturning what has been a 95% decline in energy research spending since the 1970s. The next Labour government will set up a new advanced energy research agency modelled on the success of the ARPAE Energy Research Agency in the US to bring together the best minds in Britain and the world to make the technological breakthroughs our future low-carbon economy will need. I'm delighted we have a new London Labour Mayor. I know that Sadiq shares my desire to ensure that London does not fall victim to the indecision coming from Downing Street on how we secure our economy from the effects of Brexit. Sadiq and I have known each other for many years, often agreed, occasionally disagreed, but that's life. But we're always united on what is best for Londoners and the importance the city plays to our economy. My door will always be open to discuss these matters with Sadiq and the London Assembly. I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with Sadiq in protecting London from the risks it faces from a Tory-led Brexit Britain. We'll introduce a comprehensive industrial strategy to deliver high investment, high skill, high technology economy for the future, working with businesses, trade unions and communities to deliver proper sectoral support. An example, our car industry was turned around from the depths of the 2008-9 recession by effective government intervention and collaboration through the scrappage scheme. Britain today exports more cars than ever before in its history, and they're of high technology and cleaner than any cars that were ever made before. But as well as finding new ways of working together, it means looking to change some of the rules. In light of the Leave vote and the coming negotiations with the European Union, we should take the opportunity to reassess some of those rules in the light of the challenges we face. So, rewriting the rules. We cannot be afraid of intervening directly to support supply chains and new industries. Any deal with the EU must recognise the old state aid rules are no longer valid. When governments across the world are intervening, it makes no sense to tie a government's hands here. The evidence is clear that strategic, careful interventions can make a difference. Key amongst these is government procurement. As is becoming widely recognised, governments can help create new markets and promote innovation. We will insist, as part of our infrastructure investment programme, that high-quality British-sourced steel is used. We'll make sure that all suppliers pay at least the living wage and recognise trade unions. One recent study suggested that even a 1% increase in UK government procurement in essential industries like steel and chemical can produce a 19,000 jobs boost. And if we're aiming to generate 65% of the UK's electricity from renewable sources by 2030, making use of our huge natural advantages, we'll be able to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. With government investment and support for supply chains, we'll estimate that well over 300,000 high-quality jobs can be created in our renewable industry. We can make Britain a world-leading producer in a market that Bloomberg forecasts to be worth $630 billion globally by 2030. This means dealing with the issues of workers' rights, migration, and corporate governance. The changes needed go deeper than just improving how government functions. Our corporate structures are not meeting the challenges or matching up to the opportunities. Whether it's scandals like the asset stripping of BHS or the abuse we saw at Sports Direct, it's clear that corporate government needs overhauling. It's too easy for unscrupulous bosses to exploit and ensure that flexible workforce is flexible only for them, not for the working people. We've been clear that we will strengthen employment and trade union rights. We saw just the other week the sharp increase in maternity discrimination experienced by women. We will strengthen and extend collective bargaining across our economy and abolish employment tribunal fees to enable greater access to justice for those that experience workplace discrimination. That's why, as leader of this party, I've launched Workplace 2020 to create a positive framework for employment and trade union rights for all people in work, including the self-employed. Migrants have often been the worst exploited and have been unacceptably scapegoated by the actions of very bad bosses. That the government has nurtured this insecure, precarious labour market to also actively participate in this scapegoating is totally unacceptable. It doesn't work to claim to be preventing migration. This government has managed to miss every target it's set for itself. Everyone deserves protection at work. So the next Labour government will ensure that every new national insurance registration receives details on how to join a trade union. We'll change the incentives for Britain's bosses so that it's easier for decent employers to do the right thing and invest in the long term while cutting out the abuses that undercut the good employers. In fact, I've called for a Philip Green law that would bar asset strippers like Green from loading companies up with excessive debt and paying excessive dividends. We'll tighten up the takeover code so that it takes better account of the impact on current employees and pensions. We want to see clear plans to support both before takeovers can be allowed to go through. We are the 5th richest country in the world. If you are in the top 1% of our country, you're doing better than almost anywhere else on the planet. Senior members of my party used to say, and I quote, intensely relaxed about people getting filthy rich as long as they pay their taxes. The problem was that while those in my party were relaxing, many of those filthy rich were not paying their taxes they should have been. Instead, I want to be relaxed in the knowledge that our fellow citizens are living rich lives and for our economy to be working for people and not working against them. Because the truth is that at the moment the economy is rigged against working people. I want to unrig that system. Oxfam has raised the issue of pay ratios this week and should not be ignored by politicians. This is something I'm extremely interested in, and we're looking at ways to address the huge disparity in executive pay compared to ordinary workers. Unlike big multinationals, working families do not tend to have huge cash piles to fall back on when times are hard. They cannot borrow at record low rates to invest in their future or cut sweetheart deals with HMRC. The responsibility of government is to protect citizens from these growing uncertainties in our economy, not exacerbate them as the Conservative government has done. It is one of the reasons I'm looking at policies that can help provide more security for working households. One such possible answer may be the often discussed suggestion of a universal basic income. We need to research and test this policy and have a good think about it. That's why I'm looking at the party to review and consult widely on this and every other policy we have. Co-ops and worker ownership are something to me that is very important. But more than just making sure our existing corporations work better, we should be looking to overhaul how our businesses function. Not just worker representation on the boards, but worker ownership of companies. The productivity benefits are clear, with worker-owned companies typically being more productive than those that are more traditionally owned. Labour will look to create the right to own, giving workers facing a change of ownership or closure of a firm the first refusal in putting together a worker-owned alternative. The regional development banks will be given the task, alongside assisting businesses generally, of providing the finance to make worker ownership and cooperative ownership a reality across the country. I want to see local authorities, councils, building on the example of Preston in Lancashire, where a focus on local government procurement has helped support the local economy with real investment to sustain local co-op enterprises. We can go further than this. I want to see a new cooperatively owned British Mittelstand created, high investment, high productivity, smaller firms that provide high quality employment in those sectors where we have the greatest potential. Digital technology, healthcare, high value, even manufacturing. I want to see how cooperatively owned renewable energy companies like Robin Hood in Nottingham driving the transition towards a low-carbon economy. New technologies and new business models backed up by government investment and a shared industrial strategy. There is an alternative to the drift and decay of the Tories, an economy that works for all across every part of our country, investment by government to provide the high-quality infrastructure a modern economy needs, and a new dynamic relationship between government and industry, based on a strategic, innovative approach. A new national investment bank and regional development banks to deliver funding across the whole country. A national education service providing the training and skills for everyone. An industrial strategy to provide support for essential industries and pave the way for those of the future. A commitment to decarbonise our economy, making Britain a world-leading renewables producer. Major businesses that look to the longer term and a labour market that does not exploit workers, and a new generation of cooperatively owned enterprises transforming how our economy functions and sharing wealth more evenly. We can and we will rebuild and transform this economy so that no one and no community is left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. So I think we've got time now for about 6 questions from the floor. And I can see Rob Hutton out of the corner of my eye from Bloomberg. Yes, John, please do dive in.
You can't stop him if you want to. Rob Hutton from Bloomberg. You talked at some length there about the importance of broadband to national infrastructure. Obviously, it's a new technology. Railways are important to national infrastructure. You want to renationalise British Rail. Have you thought about taking BT Openreach back into public ownership?
First of all, on railways, Network Rail is, of course, publicly owned at the moment anyway, and the public investment has gone in through British Rail, Network Rail, to the system. It's the train operating companies that we want to see into public ownership, and if you travel up from Brighton, I'm sure you'd agree with me. Everybody on Southern Railways does. On digital infrastructure, what we want is the public service requirement to remain with BT when it comes up for renewal, so that they have a public service obligation to both provide a telephone service but also a high quality fibre optic or better broadband connection to all homes. I think John might want to add something on that one.
We want to try and work with the private sector wherever we can on all of this. The most important thing is to get the investment out there now. We've been meeting with the various organisations, CBI, Federation of Small Businesses, Institute of Directors, Engineering Federation, you name it. I think we're all on the same page now about the need to get that investment up front very, very quickly. Otherwise, we're going to lose our competitive edge.
Got Kate Devlin from the Herald.
Try and get a bit of gender balance here.
I've got the lady in the striped t-shirt over there.
Thank you. Kate McCann from The Telegraph. Sorry, the wrong Kate, but Jeremy, your colleague Neil Coyle this morning said that he would like to sue you after your press team released a list of abusive MPs. Last night you stood by it and said that these comments have been made in public and you saw no problem with the list. Do you still think it was the right decision to publicise it, given that those MPs have now suffered more abuse? And John, if I may, you said in a video that as a Marxist you welcomed the financial crash because it was something you've been waiting for a generation. Do you stand by that? Are you a Marxist?
It was a joke. I think I also said that the bankers have done more to undermine capitalism than any of the SWP's activities in the last 40 years. I think it was taken as a joke, and if you listen to the tape, people fell about laughing as a result. But let's just take the issue. Let's take the issue, because with regard to Neil Cole, we'll be meeting with all our MPs on any of the issues of concern to them. Of course we will. That release came from the campaign. It didn't come from Jeremy. And we've apologised. It was just inappropriate. One of our researchers saw a bit of incoming flack and then did a list of all the statements that have been made by other MPs, some of which were not particularly kind, let's put it that way. And it was a briefing note, and it shouldn't have gone out, and we apologised for that. It certainly wasn't a list in any way to attack anyone. It was just a factual report. But again, let's just dwell on that point, really. What we're trying to do at the moment is just work with everybody. Whatever happens in the results in the leadership election next week, we've all got to come together. Interestingly enough, if you've listened to all the debates, particularly around the economy, we are all on the same page. There's no dispute at all with regard to the direction of economic policy. Over the last 12 months, we've transformed that debate. We're an anti-austerity party. We're involved in long-term patient investment. We're trying to ensure that we work with businesses and trade unions and bring them together. And it's interesting, the most common expression used by Owen Smith in the debate is, I agree with Jeremy. It's almost the I agree with Nick statement. And I think I welcome that. And the thing about last night, that going out, it just set us back, and I was furious about it, to be frank, absolutely furious. And just at a time when we were, I think, really rebuilding relationships very, very well throughout the summer. I hope it hasn't set us back, and we'll certainly have a conversation with all those that are involved. What was really good yesterday, leave aside that, what was really good yesterday, I don't know whether people saw it, but virtually the whole of the PLP swung behind Jeremy when he was attacking Theresa May about the grammar school project. In fact, actually, half the Conservative Party did as well, so we hope we'll be able to defeat the grammar school project in Parliament as well. That's the sort of unity that we're going to build, whoever is the leader after next week.
Thanks for your question. I, as you know, never abuse anybody, tempting as it sometimes is. And I don't respond to unkind remarks that I understand are sometimes thrown in my direction, because I believe that politics is far too important for that. We have to be relentlessly positive in putting forward an alternative to an unequal, divided Britain, a society that tolerates homelessness and at the same time tolerates the gross excesses at the other end of the scale. We have a week left of this campaign. During that week, I'm going to be all over this country doing rallies and meetings and discussions. And in every one of those, my whole message is going to be the Labour Party comes together to oppose austerity, comes together to build houses, comes together to invest in industry, comes together for a sustainable economy, and with our 500,000 members, develops into that incredible campaigning force in every town and village across the country, so that you carry that message across of the kind of decency of real opportunity we want for everybody in our society. That's my message for the last week of this campaign. Thanks for your question.
Okay, have we got Liam Young from The Independent? We'll bring a mic over to you.
The leadership campaign recently announced a raft of proposals on the environment and some radical policies on energy. In light of the announcements that you've made today on the economy, how are you going to ensure that we can produce economic growth alongside protecting the environment in modern Britain?
What we're suggesting in the energy development policy last week was there has to be obviously a mix of energy sources, because if you develop renewables at the rate that we want to, and I absolutely do want to, there still has to be a baseline of production to ensure continuous supply, because quite obviously the sun and the wind don't necessarily benefit us at the same time or in the same intensity. But the growth of renewables has helped a great deal. We want to ensure there is much more local energy generation. I mentioned Robin Hood Energy in my speech, and I went to see people in Nottingham last week who have put their energies and effort into developing it, getting the benefits of it, of lower tariffs and renewable energy. So we want to see energy co-ops developing all across the country. This only sounds odd in a country that hasn't even thought about that before. In Germany, this happens all the time and is absolutely the norm. And so it's that's what we're wanting to promote. And using the National Investment Bank, we can help develop into those renewable sources. That means, yes, solar. Yes, it means wind. It also means development of offshore wave as well as barrages under consideration. There are 3 or 4 big ones across the whole country under consideration. They need to be thought about as well, that can provide secure long-term sources of energy. The government's very short-sighted cutting of feed-in tariffs damaged, if almost destroyed, our solar power industry. It's beginning to recover a bit. I think there has to be a preparedness by government to create the market that encourages the solar and renewable energy sector to develop in the way that the previous Labour government did over its feed-in tariffs. I don't know if John wants to add to any of that.
Just on the question, the point of question you made, if you look at the German model, which was what we've been exploring, is rather than constrain growth, the development of renewable energy sources in that way and the investment that way has contributed to growth, and particularly with regard to the contribution towards the growth in jobs and the skilled jobs that we need, that then delivers the high wages. And because of the need for the geographical rebalancing of our investment, it gives us the ideal opportunity to do that as well. So you put the investment in, it grows the economy, creates the jobs, the high skilled jobs that create the high wages, that then generates that multiplier effect within those communities, many of whom felt left behind, and as a result of that, some have unfortunately voted for Brexit.
Paul Waugh.
Hi, Paul Waugh from Huffington Post. Mr. Corbyn, you said that any EU single market
Paul,
deal...
can you speak up a bit?
Sorry, Mr. Corbyn, Paul Waugh.
Yeah, I know you are, yeah.
You said
Hi,
that any EU single market deal must recognise state intervention. Does that mean that you're prepared to order the Labour Party MPs and peers in Parliament to veto any deal that the government comes up with unless it does include new state aid rules? And secondly, on Labour Party itself, how confident are you that former frontbenchers will return to the fold after the leadership election?
I'm very keen on providing olive branches, and indeed a number of olive branches have been offered to me. And as a practical start for this, I'm growing an olive branch, an olive tree in fact, on the balcony of my office, and it's doing very, very well. It's thriving. Really, it is. You can come and see it. So I'm very confident that as a party we are coming together, and I'm obviously having discussions with lots of colleagues, and there will be a full team in place to take on this government and provide the very effective opposition that we've already been providing in the case of John and Becky on Treasury issues. On the question you raise about state aid rules, the point I was making in my speech is that the state aid rules have been used by this government often as a defensive mechanism for their own policy making, whereas the reality has been that other governments such as Germany, France and Italy have not considered themselves particularly constrained by state aid rules. In the case of Italy on steel, and in the case of other governments on intervention to support their industries and develop a strong industrial strategy. I'm just making the point that in our relationship with the European market, in whatever form it is, a single market, an EEA, or a combination of all of those, we need to also make sure that we are not signing up, as maybe with TTIP or CETA, signing up to something that actually constrains governments from the future. We need the right to intervene in our industrial development and our economy. Germany and France have a much more effective industrial policy than Britain has had for a very long time, have a much stronger manufacturing base as a result of it. I want us to be able to do the same, in the same way that Italy traditionally has also invested a great deal in its manufacturing base. So it isn't a question of instructing people. I think there's an enormous level of agreement within the Labour Party. We need to have a high investment economy, and the role government plays is crucial and vital in that. Do you want to add to that, John?
It's not a deal breaker. The issue is to get absolute clarity. And what happened over steel, I think, is quite informative, because we were arguing for urgent government intervention at least to tide the Tartar over until an alternative source of funding or purchaser was found. At that point in time, the government argued they couldn't intervene, and they tried to pray and aid the EU rules. But within 3 weeks, Sajid Javid, whatever happened to him, Sajid Javid actually then said the government would intervene. And what we're looking for is just really the same flexibilities that other countries have exercised across the EU as well, and to get clarity on that in any future deal that will take place.
Go on, you've been waiting patiently at the front.
Go on. Where's Michael Crick?
Thanks very much. Thanks. You criticised the government for being vague on their Brexit plans, Mr Corbyn, but from what you said, it still doesn't seem clear at all whether you would be advocating membership of the EEA, full single market access. Do you want freedom of movement to continue? Can you give us any more clarity on the sort of economic relationship that you would like between Britain and the European Union, were you in charge now? And just secondly, on the Hinkley Point decision, are you happy with what the government has agreed today, in particular the special share idea, which they say will protect national security with these big infrastructure projects in future?
On the EU, I think we have been clear that the environmental, consumer and worker protection issues that have come through European legislation are very important and should be incorporated into UK law. Indeed, Labour MP Melanie On introduced a private member's bill to do just that in the case of workers' rights as a marker we've laid down. I think we've been extremely clear about that, and I was extremely clear about that throughout the referendum campaign. I'm also very clear that we have a very close economic relationship with Europe. 70% of exports go to Europe. There is a huge amount of travel back and forth from Europe, and there has to be an agreement on market access. Now, I didn't want the leave vote. It happened. We're going to have to respect the result. But I do think everyone that wants to protect jobs in Britain would want to see a close economic relationship. Hopefully that will be part of a single market, or it may be part of some wider market. We have reached out immediately to the Party of European Socialists and socialist parties all across Europe. Indeed, straight after the referendum result, I went to a meeting in Paris with the Party of European Socialists, which represents those in government as well as opposition across the whole of Europe. So obviously German SPD is represented there, as well as Italian Socialists and Spanish and so on. And Emily Thornberry, who's leading our Brexit team, had a very long series of meetings in Brussels with colleagues and with the Commission. And next Thursday she's going to Norway for a meeting with the Norwegian government and opposition about their relationship, because they're not members of the EU, but nevertheless have a very close interlocking trade arrangement with the EU. I'm meeting Martin Schulz next week to discuss this, and we're inviting the PES to come and have a special session in London later this year. So we're reaching out to colleagues in Europe to build that relationship. So it's not just what we say and do in the British Parliament. We're looking to do the same sorts of things in other parts of Europe. And dealing with the issue of working people and migration, during the referendum campaign I made it very clear many times that we should sign up for an amended version of the Posting of Workers Directive in order to prevent the dumping of underpaid contracted workers from low-wage economies in Eastern Europe into Britain, to a lesser extent in France, in order to undercut existing agreements. And there has to be respect for existing industrial agreements and existing employment arrangements. So we don't blame the people that have been exploited. Instead, we deal with the exploitation. So the Posting of Workers Directive agreement is very important to me in a post-Brexit deal with the market. I think John might want to add something on the market issue.
We've made it clear. We set out the red lines within the first week of post-Brexit, which was access to the market, which was protection of EU citizens here and UK citizens in the EU, which was protection of employment and environmental regulations, but also the protection of the financial services passporting rights too. And with regard to free movement, it was always on the basis of protecting our own workforces from the undercutting of wages. Now, we set those out literally within a week of the Brexit. We've been talking to our socialist and social democratic partners, and we're trying to use our good relationship that we've got with them to ensure we maximise our influence. Remember, the socialist group within the European Parliament is the second largest group. If we can maintain that cooperative relationship, and we're inviting them over here in the next month or so to have those discussions in more detail, if we can maintain that cooperative relationship, we think we can create a new Europe, another Europe, a Europe that is based upon the benefits of what we have the EU and trying to overcome, therefore, some of the perceived disbenefits that motivated people on the Brexit vote. We think that spirit of cooperation is capable of us achieving a deal which I think will benefit our economy in the long term.
Sorry?
With Hinkley Point, we've always tried to ensure that we have the protections there, therefore the golden share stake was one of the things we've raised before. We haven't seen yet the details. We've been here whilst the statement's been going on, but Barry Gardiner made it absolutely clear this morning in the interviews what a disappointing deal was with regard to the finances of it in comparison with what was happening in France. So we'll be critical of it. But the other issue as well is that we maximise the opportunity of getting British jobs out of this, particularly if it moves on to Bradwell.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to have to draw that to a close now, just looking at the time. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming along today. Hopefully that's whet your appetite. And please don't hesitate to get in touch with Jeremy's campaign team in the future if you have any questions. Thank you very much and safe journey back to your places of work or homes.